Hey trainers, welcome! You're with Pewter City Gym today, and we're going to fill another page or 3 in our Solah Pokédex. For those of you who might be new, Solah is this channel's ongoing project to create a region based on Southern California and some of the surrounding areas. As you might expect, we have a lot of desert, beaches, cities, wilderness, and plenty of other fun biomes besides. So far, we have a fun Rotom form based around a Gachapon machine, all the standard starters and early route critters. We have a freaky Dark Watcher-inspired Ultra Beast who's been waiting for a nice trainer such as yourself for the past 3,000 years. Regional variants. No region is complete without him after all. Poliwag and Serpentrank here. Spooky ghosts in 4 different flavors. Holiday-themed Gingerbread Man, Fire Fairies. Some rolling stones that have certainly gathered moss of some type. Regional Tatsugiris based on the California roll, and a cute little fish that, once it evolves, will definitely ruin your day. If any of these designs appeal to you at all, or the region sounds fun, I invite you to like, comment, and subscribe. I do a lot of Let's Play content, but this year we're shifting focus towards a little more artistic stuff, primarily Fakemon. If that sounds like your jam, please, you are welcome here. Anyway, this entry we're concentrating on another staple in the Pokemon formula. The cute little booger that turns into a Kaiju-inspired tank. You know this Pokemon category well. A lot of starters used to land in this kind of nebulous group, but we're not so much concentrating on them today. I'm looking more towards you. Nidoran, Aron, Whismur, Larvitar, Axew, Roly-Poly, just to name a few. There are plenty more. It is no secret that Game Freak has been inspired by Kaiju-type monsters, especially the Capsule Kaiju from the Ultraman series. I think the clearest example of this is Nidoking, who honestly looks really close to Baragon, one of Godzilla's foes. And yeah, I know, Tyranitar and Baxcalibur basically are Godzilla, but that's just low-hanging fruit. Back in those old-school Kaiju movies, it was people in rubber suits stomping around miniature landscapes made by hand. What amazing craftsmanship. Even in the goofier, wackier looking instances of this stuff, you gotta appreciate the dedication to craft. To try and hide the human shape underneath, a lot of these monsters had big armor plates to change the silhouette underneath the suit to something more monster-like. And that's why a lot of Kaiju-inspired Pokemon have armored hides and segmented joints. You can see the evolution of these design elements from necessity in the source material all the way through to stylistic choices in the final designs of the Pokemon. Isn't that cool? I think it is. That's not the case with every Kaiju, of course, just a lot of them. You also have things like the 3-headed King Ghidorah and Mothra, who both have Pokemon counterparts, and a beta design which we only have the back sprite of for a Pokemon based on the Kaiju Boo. No, not that Boo. Or that one. Or that one either. Anyway, this was apparently going to be a male counterpart for Jinx. I'm kind of glad that that last one never made it off the drawing board, but this Kaiju is just covered in long hair. It's kind of like a dollar store Chewbacca. Nice to know that a Kaiju can be fluffy though. I guess King Kong counts in that regard as well. Ooh, so does May's mom in Turning Red. Later Kaiju movies have been able to take advantage of CGI, so we get a more organic looking set of monsters. And that's also cool. I do love the recent MonsterVerse stuff, and I remember being super excited for Godzilla back in 1998. Not so much wrong with that movie overall, but I'll be honest, I still really like it. Anyway, that's enough nerding out over monsters. Now it's time for me to nerd out over trees. It's an obvious thing, a fact that everyone knows, but it's still kind of amazing how something as small as a pine tree seed can become a 70-foot tall pine tree. The Ponderosa pine is what I'm looking at here. You might have heard of Ponderosa before. The Ponderosa Ranch is the fictional home of the equally fictional Cartwright family from that old western show Bonanza. It's set out towards Nevada, but the trees that ranch was named for are common in California too. One of the largest pine tree species, the Ponderosa pine bark expands and cracks into these big plates that have always made me think of big scales like you'd find on some ginormous primordial creature. You know, like a Kaiju. You can see where I'm going with this, I hope. So anyway, let's get moving. Probably not to the lab, as it sounds like something big is stomping its way through the city. Probably some kind of reckless experiment gone wrong. Who would do such a thing, right? Well, let's get out of here for now and head for the hills. Literally. Whew. Man, I love nature. Always nice to have a little stroll out in the wilderness, right? So, my idea for this Fakemon started with those two concepts, the Ponderosa Pine and Kaiju-inspired Pokemon. Pine cones are cute, armored and have a pleasing shape for a creature that's to grow up and be big. Triangles have a very particular shape language when placed like this. They look sturdy, hard to move, bottom heavy. A lot of Pokemon use this shape to insinuate bulky, defensive heavy properties. Place a pine cone on the stem end and viola. It's got a similar shape. The other thing about pine trees, of course, is their pine needles, and those are just too perfect a way to incorporate some fluffiness and some nice pointy details into a design as well. I want it to look kind of sleepy. This is a monster you'd find in the mountains and forests surrounding them. I like the idea of a dozy, funny little forest animal. Speaking of animals, we're taking cues from armadillos here. There are some that are native to Southern California, and they have that armored, curl up and hide kind of energy that I want. In terms of colors, young pine needles have this kind of blue color to them, so I wanted to incorporate that along with a darker green and a yellow tan color for the fur. And here you have Conifer, the pinecone Pokemon. These Pokemon are slow-moving burrowers who live life at their own pace. They can curl into a ball when attacked, and because most of their nutrition comes from the sun, if they are on moist ground, they can stay curled up for days at a time. Here are your stats and moves. It's a pure grass type, so there's a big focus on moves that emphasize that. Conifer is just... I'm sorry, I really just couldn't resist. Normally I Google my name choices to make sure that I'm not indirectly ripping someone off. Like, this Pokemon is Penkalis, let's Google it, and nope, mine is the only one. Conifer? I'm not gonna do it. Even if there are others, I don't care, it's too perfect, and even if there were 100 of them, I'm keeping it. Next comes the middle stage. This fellow is of course going to be bigger and bulkier. You'll start to see a bit more of that Kaiju influence now. It looks stocky and strong, even if it doesn't look very fierce. I added a darker brown now to indicate areas of its body that are developing armor-like bark. There's another influence here. The giant prehistoric sloths, like Jefferson's sloth that used to roam around in Southern California back in prehistoric times. I was actually super surprised to find out that armadillos and sloths are related groups of mammals. You wouldn't expect it, but there you are. Isn't nature incredible? Anyway, giant sloths used to roam these areas. You can see remains of them in the La Brea Tar Pits Museum in Los Angeles. They carried armor under their fur in the form of osteoderms, scale-like plates of hard stuff under the skin, making them hard to hurt and very heavy. And here you have Lombodon, the slumbering sloth Pokemon. Unlike their earlier form, these Pokemon cannot effectively roll into a ball, and they require more food to support their larger, stronger bodies. They are still heavily armored though, and prove tough to most predators. Here are your stats and moves. They add a fair bit to their stats defensively, and you have a few more moves that would make them effective stallers. Lombodon is both from lumber, wood, and the word for moving around slowly, and dawn, from Glyptodon, which is an extinct armadillo species. Dawn is a suffix you see in a lot of the names for extinct animals, Megalodon, Iguanodon. It actually comes from the Greek word odon, which refers to teeth. So, there you go. I mean, Lizardon certainly has some big chompers. For the final form, we're going all in on those extinct sloth influences and ramping up the pine needle production. You're gonna need a grass stone to access this third and final form. The blue needles are almost gone here, just a little patch of new growth on the belly. Everything else is hardened green, much like their bodies switching out that soft yellow hair for big chunks of bark armor. Its face? Still fluffy and soft and cute, though with a sleepy expression despite those big long claws. And here we have Ponderostum, the slumbering sloth Pokemon. Ponderostum can stand motionless for days on end, digesting large meals. Even though their eyes remain open, they are actually sleeping in this state. Don't approach them while slumbering, as startling them awake will cause them to attack. Here are your stats and moves. No additional moves can be learned naturally because this is a stone evolution, though you'll notice a few new moves which would be available via Move Relearner. The name? Ponderosa Pines, plus ponderous as in slow, heavy movement. Ponderous topics of conversation are things that are slow and dull, and that kind of ties in there as well. Stump? Well, stumps are cut off trees, of course, but it can also be used to describe heavy, deliberate movement, not to be confused with stomp. Probably? I think so. But close anyway. In terms of abilities, Shell Armor is the standard ability for all 3 evolutionary forms, with that preventing this Pokemon from taking any critical hits. The hidden ability is Rough Skin, which damages opponents, making attacks that make physical contact hurt. Pair that up with a Rocky Helmet, and this Pokemon becomes hard to hit unless you're doing so from a distance. Anyway, here's the shiny colors, and this would be the egg. It looks like a little pine cone. This is a Pokemon that lives in the mountains, especially in the ones around Route 3 and onward. The further north you go, the more likely you are to find Lumbadon in the wild. Sounds like things in the city have calmed down a bit. Maybe they got the regional champ to come in and battle back whatever that monster was, which I have no foreknowledge of at all. Well, as always, trainers, thanks so much for joining me. It's super appreciated. I'm looking forward to catching you in the next video, but until then, take care of yourselves. Bye!